9090 here on XYZ. I'm Blake Boer, and I'll be with you throughout tonight's program. Our focus tonight will be on the current state of the economy and how it compares to that of the Great Depression and how it could lead to another financial crisis. Alright, gentlemen, let's get this started. Our national debt is increasing as we speak. The current total is at more than $16 trillion and growing, as you can see from the running debt clock. If we don't act fast as a nation, we could be putting the future of the United States at risk. This includes our family members, generations down the line. Let's imagine ourselves approximately 30 years down the road, where our federal government is in a state of ruin and despair, much like that of the Great Depression. Even the higher income families will struggle to make ends meet, not to mention low income families who will likely be forced out onto the streets. And the current rates, our national debt is set to surpass $35 trillion by the year 2040. The wave of economic crisis will be unlike anything this world has ever seen. I have a word of advice for every congressman holding an office on Capitol Hill. Put yourselves in the shoes of those less fortunate than you. Maybe then you'll see just how crippling the real world actually is. To give you a better idea of the severity of the financial crisis, I'll throw this one over to rookie field reporter Austin Jeans for an insight on the bank's role in the Great Depression and the recent recession. Austin?
Thank you, Blake. When the Great Depression started in the 1920s, everything was a mess. The stock market crashed, causing many people to lose investments. Banks crashed, as well as causing people to run toward banks and try to get their money back. The bank couldn't please these people, and the banks failed and crashed. Not only were the people out of money, so were the banks. The banks did not have money to pay back the people who were successful with their loans. All of these reasons were some of the causes of the Great Depression. Banks trusted farmers to use their loans and to make income, but most farmers didn't. In 2008, there was still not enough regulation on banks to keep them from failing. There still was the same problems with banks like there was during the Great Depression. The only difference was the government had more money and bailed out many banks. Some of the significant banks that crashed were AIG and Washington Mutual. What banks are doing now is putting new regulation on a lot of new things. If stocks get too low, they shut the whole stock market down. This is to prevent another Great Depression or Great Recession from happening again. Banks don't give out loans if you have a bad credit score or history. You get a bad credit history score by not paying back loans you had before. Your credit score can be destroyed in a short amount of time, but takes a lifetime to build back up. Back to you, Boer.
For that behind-the-scenes look at the banking system. Who knew that one part of the system could cause that much chaos and wreak that much havoc on our economy? Especially that of an international power like the United States. We'll hear from reporter Jacob Watts and his inside research on the effects of inflation in the United States, both during the Great Depression and the recent recession. Jacob?
Like, inflation. It's just one of many factors that could lead to another crash. With inflation, the value of a dollar goes down. With this, corporations and the government may not be able to pay overseas employees, but also, if a nation has any major investments in other countries, that investment will not be as great, which could increase the nation's debt due to now owing more to the country they had investments in. And also, a nation's negotiating power is partially economic. So, if their purchasing power is not as great, chances are their negotiating power will also be weaker if their purchasing power is. This is Jacob Watts for 9090 on XYZ signing off.
Shocking, absolutely shocking to see just how bad our economy has become, and with astonishing inflation rates, how little the US dollar is currently worth. From once being the epitome of world currency to being thought of as no more than a measly piece of green paper that is mocked around the world. For the show, we go to senior investigative reporter Tanner Brunson, whose focus this evening is on the future of this great country and what lies in store for it if we as a nation do not come together and pull ourselves out of this hole.
Thanks, Boer. I'm here today to show you what the future may look like if this crisis is not averted. This is my home. My family and I were doing the best we ever had been before the economy crashed. The economy was hitting records, just like before the Great Depression. Then China demanded their money back. So what does the government do? The government decides to print money. What a terrible idea. The inflation rate just grew and grew and grew. it got so high that my family had to get their money out of the banks before it was completely worthless. The banks crashed the very next day. Now my family went from this house to this house. We were lucky though. My dad had a good job and we were stable. It seems like he's the minority though. Our unemployment plummeted to 25%, just like the Great Depression. And we feel like the minority of the people that actually had the jobs. Many families like us didn't get their houses back. They didn't even get a bad house back. They were thrown out onto the streets. Obama then decided to set up little villages like the one in our backyard, almost comparative to Hoovervilles. The houses out there are terrible. I would take you out there, but I would be afraid because of all the crime that goes on, and you have expensive equipment that may be in danger. I'm sorry, I have to go to work. If I have any advice, don't let this ever happen again.
Thank you, Tanner, for that in-depth piece of journalism. Once again, we're reminded how good some of us as Americans have it going for us. That's all we have for you tonight, folks. Please tune in next week for more riveting news that'll make you laugh, cry, love, and smile. For all of us here at 9090, we bid adieu to those of you watching at home. Bye.
Bye.
Somebody give me some, like, let me go with water.
Get the man some water! Goodness, 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 get the star some water!
Thank you, Tanner, for that
Tears of
in-depth
joy.
piece of journalism.
A skunk!
And that was the wrong.
Shocking. Absolutely shocking.
This house. We were lucky though. My dad had a good job and we were stable. Really awesome. Really. It's not how poor people look. Really. Give me it back. Seriously.